Weeks before the Christmas of 2006, a quiet garage in the north of Glasgow is turned into a bloody killing ground amid an escalating gang war. Two men wearing masks jump out of a car and open fire on staff in a scene like something from The Godfather. The brutal slaying is another grim marker in an ongoing battle between two warring families. It all stemmed back to the summer of 2001. In a safe house in a North Glasgow housing scheme, music blared and spirits soared. But as dawn broke for the notorious Daniel family, a bleary-eyed discovery ignited a turf war that would bleed through the city for years. A £20,000 cocaine stash, stolen by the neighbouring Lyons clan, plunged the city into an era of uncontrollable violence. What followed was 2 decades of shootings, firebombings and tit-for-tat attacks as the rival families savagely fought for control of the Glasgow drugs trade. And it's far from over. This is the story of the Lyons and the Daniels. The murky tale begins in Milton, home to the feared Lyons mob, a criminal enterprise spearheaded by the Godfather, Eddie Lyons Sr. A Jack-the-Lad character, Eddie Sr. had started out his criminal empire selling pirate videotapes before turning his attention to more sinister exploits. To innocent outsiders, Eddie Sr. was a community champion. He cultivated an image of respectability, even befriending the local police. He was the man who convinced the council to hand over the keys to the disused Churnside school, later boosted by the controversial injection of a staggering £1 million of public cash. But the mask of the community champion was fragile. It wasn't long before Eddie Sr.'s true underworld intentions began to surface. The Churnside school, once a beacon of public service, became a clandestine hub, a fortress for his son and his notorious club boys' cronies. This was more than just a hangout. This was the headquarters of the Lyons crime empire, a place where criminal ambitions were forged in the shadows, with the streets of Glasgow destined for mayhem. With money and power in their sights, it was inevitable that attention would turn to their rivals in the north of the city, the Daniel family. Headed up by feared crime boss Jamie Daniel in nearby Postle Park, both crime groups were desperate for control of the lucrative drugs trade flowing through the city. Jamie, who at one stage had amassed an empire worth £10 million, began his criminal career dealing in used cars and scrap metal before forming a major heroin syndicate with his brothers. And after the theft of £20,000 of coke from their Milton safe house, a clear message had to be sent. The architect of this grim retribution was Kevin Carroll, a 24-year-old hood on the rise in the Daniel clan. His vile hatred of his rivals was deep-rooted, not least because he was reportedly bullied by members of the Lyons in his school days. Eager to impress boss Jamie, a man whose daughter Kelly Green he was dating, Carroll orchestrated a terrifying symphony of violence. Their first target, Stephen Lyons, son of Eddie Sr. They took aim in September 2001 outside a pub in Lamb Hill, but the gunman missed his mark. But this didn't deter the Daniel crew. Their attention shifted to a new target, the Churnside Centre, which was torched, resulting in £30,000 of damage, and its minibus left a mangled wreck. Carroll was in turn blasted twice in the leg with a sawn-off shotgun outside his mum's house in Milton in January 2003, but survived the attack. Just 11 days later, Eddie Sr.'s brother Johnny was shot outside his home in nearby Stornoway Street. The wallet in his back pocket took the impact, and doctors think that may have saved him. As the feud continued, in November 2006, Carroll allegedly used a 4x4 and a tow rope to topple the headstone of Eddie Sr.'s son Gary, who was only 8 when he died of leukemia in 1991. The desecration of his grave marked a new low between the warring families. Carroll had crossed a line, but was still not satisfied. Within days, he ambushed and attempted to shoot Eddie Lyons Jr. in Bells Hill in Lanarkshire. Lyons suffered minor injuries when his own car rolled over him. Desperate for revenge and furious over the desecration of a child's grave, the Lyons mob retaliated. Carroll, along with close associate Ross Sherlock, were blasted in Cleland Avenue in Bishop Briggs. Gunned down from close range, Carroll suffered serious injuries after taking a hit to the stomach. Sherlock was hit in the legs. Miraculously, both survived. But what happened next was one of the most brazen attacks the city had ever seen, and a bloody gangland feud which had largely been conducted in the shadows was making headline news. In December 2006, Daniel's associates Raymond Anderson and James MacDonald had one target in their sights: Apple Roll Motors, a garage in Lamb Hill owned by David Lyons, brother of clan boss Eddie Sr. Dressed in trench coats, wearing old men masks and armed with handguns, the pair stormed the forecourt and opened fire in a scene later likened to a Godfather shootout by lawyer Donald Finlay. David took cover, screaming for others to run for their lives, but his nephew, 21-year-old Michael, his only crime being a member of the wrong family, was chased inside and shot dead. Stephen Lyons was also injured, along with his associate Robert Pickett, known as Piggy, who lost a kidney. They escaped in a car while being chased by the second gunman, who was also firing, causing the back window to explode. Just over a week later, David Lyons received a ransom note through the post, the clearest evidence yet that the bloodshed was related to the stolen drugs 5 years earlier. It read, "The boys owe me £25,000 and I want what's owed to me. It's for drugs. They all know what it's about and they've got to pay the piper." The High Court in Glasgow later heard that David didn't pay the money and instead handed the letter to police. Anderson and MacDonald were placed under surveillance, which eventually led officers to a house in the Gartham Lock area where a machine gun, grenades and ammunition were discovered. Both men were heard calling themselves the Untouchables and talking about the mysterious piper who was mentioned in the letter sent to Mr. Lyons. At their trial here at the High Court in Glasgow, Anderson and MacDonald both pleaded not guilty to the charges, but were found guilty by majority verdict. At the time, the trial judge, Lord Hardy, called the attack a cold-blooded execution before jailing the pair for life and ordering that they should serve at least 35 years, a record at the time, which was eventually reduced to 30 years on appeal. Despite justice in the courts, this was a score that could only be settled with blood. And just over 3 years later, Gerbil again found himself the target of a brazen execution, one that this time would claim his life and rock the underworld. By 2009, Gerbil was out of control. It was no secret he was the most unpredictable player in the feud, striking fear into rivals with brutal kidnappings, known as alien abductions, involving torture and robberies. But he was typically careful, often wearing a bulletproof vest after multiple previous attempts on his life. But on the 13th of January 2010, he was more relaxed as he attended a lunchtime business meeting in Asda in Rob Royston. As he sat in the back of his black Audi A3, a speeding Volkswagen Golf ambushed the thug as stunned shoppers looked on in horror. Two masked gunmen got out and fired 13 shots in total to his head and chest in a chilling attack that lasted just 25 seconds. The killing became the most famous moment in the long-running feud between the Daniel and Lyons crews, as violence spilled out from the murky underworld into a supermarket car park filled with shoppers. In July that year, leading Lyons gang member Ross Monaghan was arrested in connection with the assassination and put on trial, but he denied all charges against him and lodged a special defence of incrimination against 8 people. His trial collapsed due to insufficient evidence, but William Buff Patterson was found guilty and given a 22-year jail sentence. Not before Gerbil's notoriety was highlighted for all to see when a list of 99 potential suspects was read out in court. Some believe it was a lucky escape for Monaghan, while his co-accused was given a lengthy time in prison. And despite almost 7 years since the assassination of the Gerbil, there had to be revenge for his death. Monaghan was taking his daughter to school in Glasgow shortly after 9 in the morning and narrowly avoided being shot dead by a gunman. Well, in January 2017, it was just like any other day here in Pennylee as parents took their children to school. But little did they know there was a gunman lying in wait. He had a kid's buggy, and within that he had a firearm, then honed in on his target, Ross Monaghan, firing 2 shots, one hitting him in the shoulder, the other missing. Monaghan was wearing a bulletproof vest at the time and quickly fled to Spain following the attack, but it quickly showed just how big a player he was becoming and becoming a marked man, which ultimately led to his death just 8 years later. Across the divide, another major development was unfolding. Jamie Daniel, the kingpin of the Daniel clan, saw his world come crashing down when he was diagnosed with cancer in 2010 before passing away in July 2016. The 58-year-old's death sparked fears the clan would plummet into civil war as rivals battled to seize control. But Bonzo, son of crime queen Annette Daniel, Jamie's sister, took charge, calling the shots as he ran their multi-million-pound drug-dealing empire and legitimate businesses, making him the obvious target for the rival Lyons clan, hoping to take over the Glasgow drugs trade. Bonzo was born into crime and has lived that life, but some underworld sources claim it's not a natural fit for him. His cousin, Francis Fraggle Green, son of Jamie, is viewed by some as a more obvious head of the family. One source said, because of Bonzo's nickname and what happened to his face, he gets most of the attention. But many think Fraggle is the more natural crime boss. Bonzo would rather spend time with his partner and kids and go to Ibrox to watch his beloved Rangers than be mired in feuds and constantly looking over his shoulder. But given who his relatives are, there was never any realistic prospect of a normal life. He obviously has connections to some very dangerous people, so he'll always get respect through that. But he's not a wild gangster type who flaunts violence and wealth. That's not his style. And on the 18th of May 2017, the Lions had Bonzo firmly in their sights. After watching Rangers play Aberdeen at Ibrox, the new Daniels boss was being tracked by ruthless enemies hungry for power. An Audi S3 and a Volkswagen Golf materialised in his rearview mirror. The rival Lions gang, relentless in their pursuit. They knew his every move, thanks to tracking devices hidden on his vehicle. A high-speed chase erupted, tearing through the city, red lights ignored, as two worlds collided. From Milton to the M8 at Port Dundas, the 100-mile-an-hour pursuit escalated until Bonzo crashed on a ramp, trapped. What followed was a brutal, targeted assault. Cleavers, machetes, and a clawhammer, wielded with savage intent. Bonzo's face became a canvas of carnage, deep lacerations, a nose left hanging, damage so severe police initially mistook it for a gunshot wound. With fractured bones and a dislocated skull, Bonzo was left for dead, his attackers vanishing into the night. In the period following the attack, Bonzo was guarded round the clock amid fears of another attempt on his life. A police car was also stationed outside his home in the Bishop Briggs area of the city. And detectives soon had their first breakthrough when a car used in the assassination attempt was later found in Ford Street in the Germiston area of Glasgow. A second car was later found alight in Balmuldy Road in Bishop Briggs. Officers swooped on properties across the city and 6 members of the Lyons gang were arrested. Brian Ferguson, Andrew Gallagher, Robert Pickett, Andrew Sinclair, John Hardy and Peter Bain were all put in the dock at the High Court in Glasgow, accused of trying to kill members of the Daniel clan. The trial lasted 14 weeks and cost the taxpayer £6 million.
You sought to turn Glasgow into a war zone for your feud. This is a civilised country which is based on the rule of law. There is no place for this type of conduct, retribution or the law of the jungle.
The 6 men were all convicted of conspiracy to murder. Brian Ferguson, Andrew Gallagher and John Hardy were all jailed for 20 years. Robert Pickett was given 16 years, Peter Bain was given 15 years and even gave the thumbs up to someone in the gallery as the sentence was handed down, while Andrew Sinclair was given 13 years and 3 months. Lord Mulholland told them that Stephen Daniel gave evidence and said he was not aware of any feud between the Lyons and Daniels families. He said he did not believe a word, and more importantly, neither did the jury. Bonzo's brazen evidence underscored the belief that the feud would be settled on the streets rather than in the courtroom, highlighting the deep-seated animosity between the two clans and the desire for revenge. And while members of the Lyons gang were put away for a long time, Bonzo fought back to lead the Daniel crime clan, which is once again locked in an explosive battle with their rivals, led by Stephen Lyons and Ross Miami McGill. McGill, a former chief of the Union Bears, has waged a 4-month gang war, spilling out across central Scotland over a £500,000 cocaine deal. It all stemmed from associates of jailed crime boss Mark Richardson, an ally of the Daniels, using fake notes to pay for £500,000 worth of cocaine. A group called Tamil Junto, said to be working for McGill, have fired shots, attacked rivals with machetes and firebombed homes as they look to take control of the cocaine trade across Scotland. Daniel gang members and their families have been targeted due to their links with Richardson, currently banged up in Low Moss. But nobody, especially the Lyons family, could have expected what would happen next. Ross Monaghan and Eddie Lyons Jr. were boozing in Monaghan's bar in Fuengirola in Spain after watching the Champions League final at the end of May, when a gunman appeared and shot Eddie Jr. in the chest at close range outside the bar. He died instantly. Monaghan ran into the bar in a desperate bid to escape and was gunned down as terrified staff and customers hid under tables and chairs. He is said to have been shot at least 4 times in the chest and stomach. Despite attempts by police and paramedics to save his life, he passed away before he could be taken to hospital. Police Scotland said at the time that the assassination of the pair had nothing to do with the ongoing gang war in Scotland, but Spanish police insisted that the suspect was an internal member of the Daniel clan. And around 500 mourners gathered at the crematorium in Bishopbriggs to pay their respects to the gangland figures Eddie Lyons Jr. and Ross Monaghan. The pair were gunned down in a gangland execution in the Costa del Sol at the end of May. Among them, Godfather Eddie Sr., who was surrounded by a security team, understandably stricken with grief at the death of his son, Eddie Jr. And family members and close pals attended the service inside, while hundreds braved the rain to pay their respects to the pair.